When Florida unveiled its plan to fight invasive Burmese pythons with robotic rabbits, politicians scoffed. Headlines mocked it as science fiction. Memes exploded. Florida has lost it, critics declared. But within months, those same critics fell silent. The robotic decoys, designed to lure and locate massive snakes, were delivering real results: faster captures, fewer predators, and signs of ecosystem recovery. What started as ridicule has become revolution. And now even lawmakers are scrambling to get behind the project. A wild ecosystem unravels. Once, the Florida Everglades were a crown jewel of biodiversity, a vast subtropical wilderness spanning over 1.5 million acres. By 1990, ecologists valued its services at roughly $31.5 billion per year, including flood control, fishing, and ecotourism. This region hosted a balanced web of life: raccoons, bobcats, marsh rabbits, and native predators like the eastern indigo snake. It was not just wild, it was stable, ancient, and essential to South Florida's environmental identity. That stability shattered in August 1992, when Hurricane Andrew, a Category 5 storm, slammed into southern Florida. It destroyed homes, power grids, and one unusual facility: a reptile breeding compound housing exotic pets. Among the escapees were Burmese pythons, Python bivitatus, massive constrictors native to Southeast Asia. Some had already been released by overwhelmed pet owners. Others now slipped unnoticed into the wetlands. With no natural predators and an abundance of prey, they thrived. Over the next 2 decades, populations of small to mid-sized mammals plummeted. A 2012 study comparing mammal counts from 2003 to 2011 to earlier baselines found devastating declines. Raccoons down 99.3%, opossums down 98.9%, bobcats down 87.5%. Marsh rabbits vanished. The once rich nocturnal tapestry of the Everglades became eerily quiet. The snakes were not simply another invader. They were ecosystem engineers in the worst way, reshaping the food chain from the top down. This wasn't just about lost animals, it was a systemic collapse. Biologists warned that predators like alligators and panthers would suffer without prey. Pollination, seed dispersal, and wetland health declined. The Everglades' identity as a resilient wild system was unraveling. Florida wasn't facing a nuisance species. It was facing an ecological tipping point that threatened everything from tourism to climate resilience. As the scale of the python crisis became clear by 2010, traditional efforts were mobilized: hunts, traps, surveillance. But decade after decade, snakes continued spreading. With each failure, Florida edged closer to a hard truth: normal solutions were not enough. Traditional solutions fail. By 2013, Florida launched the high-profile Python Challenge, inviting the public to hunt Burmese pythons across the Everglades. In the 2024 event, 857 participants removed just 195 snakes, barely scratching the surface. While the spectacle drew headlines, it proved soberingly ineffective. The vast swamp terrain and the snakes' stealth made them almost impossible to find, even for experts. Florida ramped up professional efforts. Wildlife agencies deployed contractors, trained python hunting dogs, and tested infrared drones and motion-triggered traps. Despite millions in spending, the results barely budged. Python populations continued expanding into Big Cypress, Central Florida, and even near Lake Okeechobee. Biologists noted that each female could lay 50 to 100 eggs annually, and juveniles reached maturity in just 3 to 4 years. The numbers favored the snakes. By 2018, scientists began sounding more resigned. The U.S. Geological Survey acknowledged that full eradication was unrealistic. Slowing the spread, not stopping it, became the new goal. But even that was daunting. Removal rates lagged behind reproduction. Each captured snake represented dozens more slithering unseen through mangroves and marshes. Conservationists faced a mounting psychological toll. Fighting a war they seemed doomed to lose. In desperation, some agencies began looking beyond field boots and helicopters. If human search teams couldn't find the snakes fast enough, perhaps technology could help. Not by replacing people, but by changing the game entirely. It was around this time that a strange, almost comedic proposal emerged, from the edge of plausibility into the realm of serious planning. It sounded like a cartoon. Robotic rabbits to hunt pythons. Critics scoffed, memes exploded, headlines mocked it. But behind the ridicule lay a pressing reality. Florida needed something new. Invasion biology, it turned out, was ready for a technological gamble. The robot rabbits idea sounds ridiculous. In late 2023, Florida officials unveiled a plan to deploy robotic marsh rabbits, devices designed to mimic heat, scent, and motion to lure out elusive pythons. Developed by researchers from the University of Florida and the South Florida Water Management District, these mechanical decoys were solar-powered and equipped with motion sensors, thermal signatures, and camera arrays. The public reaction? A mix of disbelief and derision. Florida man meets Terminator, joked social media users. News outlets headlined the idea as Florida goes full sci-fi. Politicians across party lines questioned the expense and logic. Why release synthetic animals into a wildlife crisis? Memes flooded in. Late-night shows had a field day. The contrast was stark. Tiny robot bunnies squaring off against 20-foot constrictors sounded more like satire than science. But beneath the noise, the science was serious. Each robot was designed not to kill, but to bait. When a python struck the decoy, onboard sensors captured the interaction, relayed GPS coordinates, and triggered an alert to nearby field teams. Trained responders could then converge for rapid capture. Instead of combing acres blindly, they were now responding to real-time detection, a shift from search to ambush. And desperation is a powerful motivator. By 2024, nearly every conventional tool had failed to dent the python population meaningfully. With removal costs rising and public patience wearing thin, officials embraced the unlikely. If artificial rabbits could expose the invisible, maybe the joke could become the strategy. The Python War had entered its robotic phase because, frankly, nothing else was working. Transition, 40 words. As the first robot units were deployed into Everglades National Park, skeptics watched closely. Could machines succeed where people failed? What came next wasn't just unexpected. It marked a turning point in Florida's ecological war and changed everything that followed. How the robot program works. Developed in 2023 to 2024 by the University of Florida and the South Florida Water Management District, the robotic marsh rabbit wasn't built for cuteness. It was engineered for war. Each unit mimicked real prey by emitting a thermal signature, producing scent markers chemically similar to rabbit musk, and performing jerky movements designed to trigger predatory responses. Solar panels kept the robots running in the sun-drenched Everglades, while embedded motion sensors, infrared cameras, and GPS transmitters turned them into mobile surveillance posts. These devices didn't work alone. When a Burmese python approached, sensing heat and scent, the robot's embedded cameras captured the movement. If a strike occurred or proximity thresholds were breached, the system sent a real-time alert to field operatives within a 5-mile radius. Instead of random search patterns, hunters could now respond directly to encounters, increasing efficiency and reducing wasted effort. This strike and alert protocol changed the strategy, from human chase to python bait. By mid-2024, the project had deployed over 120 robotic units across controlled zones within Everglades National Park, Big Cypress National Preserve, and Loxahatchee Wildlife Refuge. These units operated continuously, day and night, under most weather conditions. They became silent traps, not in the traditional sense, but as data-gathering beacons in a vast and otherwise impenetrable ecosystem. The goal wasn't to kill snakes, it was to reveal them. Crucially, this initiative wasn't positioned as a replacement for human efforts. It was an amplifier. The robots filled the surveillance gap, allowing biologists, conservation officers, and volunteers to work smarter. Suddenly, the odds shifted. Florida wasn't just reacting, it was predicting. This blending of machine awareness and biological expertise didn't just level the playing field, it reshaped it. And then, to the astonishment of many, it started working. Reports came in, data flowed. Python encounters increased in targeted zones. What once seemed like science fiction was now science fact. And critics were running out of things to mock. The results leave everyone speechless. The first datasets from summer 2024 showed a sharp uptick in confirmed python sightings within robot deployment zones. Of the 120 robot units placed, dozens reported multiple python interactions within the first 30 days. In zones where human teams previously found only one snake per week, now they found 2 or 3 per day. Cameras captured footage of massive 14 to 18-foot constrictors engaging the decoys, strikes that would have gone undetected without the bait. Importantly, the python size distribution began to shift. Larger, older snakes, typically the breeding females, were being captured more frequently. This was a turning point. Older pythons laid the largest clutches, some producing over 90 eggs annually. Removing them meant removing exponential future threats. Field agents reported that python capture rates in high deployment zones doubled compared to control areas without robots. The success silenced critics. Lawmakers who had mocked the program now sought briefings. Social media skeptics pivoted, sharing videos of real python encounters caught by the decoys. Conservationists called it a game changer. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission expanded funding requests, citing a 30% increase in python removal efficiency within test sectors. Yet beyond the statistics, there was symbolism. The robotic rabbit, a source of derision, became the face of technological adaptation in the Anthropocene. It proved that even whimsical ideas, backed by data and desperation, could reshape the front line of ecological conflict. What began as a media joke had become a conservation blueprint. But the robots weren't working alone. While they tracked from the marsh, another front had opened. Nature's own predators were beginning to rise again. And in an unexpected turn, the native food chain itself began to push back. Native snakes and predators. Fight back. Alongside the robot rollout, Florida biologists initiated a parallel campaign. The reintroduction of the eastern indigo snake, Drymarchon cooperi, a native non-venomous apex predator once abundant across the southeast. In 2024, 41 captive-bred indigo snakes were released into the Panhandle region, part of a long-term effort by the Oriane Center for Indigo Conservation and the Nature Conservancy. Indigos are one of the few native species known to prey on other snakes, including pythons. These reintroductions marked the first major attempt to re-establish natural biological pressure against the python invasion. While robot rabbits lured and revealed, the indigos represented resistance from within. Biologists monitored the new arrivals using radiotelemetry, tracking movement, territory, and hunting behavior. Within months, trail cameras captured rare but astonishing events. Indigos confronting juvenile pythons. Even more dramatic, one bobcat was filmed ambushing a python nearly its size. Nature wasn't done fighting. As marsh rabbit populations showed signs of recovery in robot-patrolled areas, other native predators began reappearing: red foxes, raptors, and alligators. The return of prey species fueled predator resurgence. These moments, rare as they were, suggested a new kind of synergy: robotic intervention, buying time for biological recovery. The shift was more than tactical. It was philosophical. Florida's strategy now fused tech and ecology, machine and animal. It wasn't about dominating nature with tools, but helping it restore itself with assistance. The robots didn't replace the food web, they gave it a chance to heal. For the first time in decades, the Everglades showed hints of resistance, not just from humans, but from the land itself. What emerged in Florida wasn't just a plan, it was a model, a strange alliance of robots, reptiles, and resilience that offered more than containment. It offered a new way of thinking about invasive species and how to truly fight them. The broader lesson for ecological warfare. The Everglades crisis offers a hard-won lesson. Once an ecosystem is invaded, no single tool can reclaim it. The failure of traditional python control methods showed that eradication is a fantasy when the invader reproduces faster than it can be removed. Burmese pythons lay up to 100 eggs per clutch and reach reproductive maturity in just 3 years. By the time humans detect their presence, they've already multiplied. The scale simply overwhelms. But Florida's robot rabbit program, alongside native predator reintroduction, proved that innovation can shift outcomes. This wasn't just another conservation gimmick. It was a multi-pronged strategy blending automation, tracking tech, and ecological restoration. The robots didn't kill pythons directly. They enabled faster detection, sharper response, and better allocation of field resources. Meanwhile, animals like the eastern indigo snake re-established predation pressure, something no drone or trap could simulate. This integrated approach, lure, detect, remove, restore, forms a new model for invasive species management. Applied elsewhere, it could support battles against feral hogs in Texas, cane toads in Australia, or lionfish in the Caribbean. The Everglades became a testing ground, but the blueprint is globally applicable. The message, don't fight nature with one hammer. Build a toolkit. Most striking of all, the weirdness of the solution became its strength. Ridiculed at first, the robot bunnies embodied something essential about modern conservation. When ecosystems collapse, thinking small, slow, or conventional simply doesn't work. Sometimes the best defense is audacious, absurd, and effective. But even as success stories emerged, the fight was far from over. The Everglades remained under siege. Technology helped, nature pushed back, but the long-term outcome would depend on persistence and the willingness to keep experimenting at scale. What went right? By late 2024, tangible results were emerging. The Robot Rabbit program showed improved python detection rates, leading to measurable increases in removals, especially of large breeding females. Simultaneously, reintroduced indigo snakes were observed in new territories, and for the first time, wild-born hatchlings were documented. These wins weren't just symbolic. They represented the ecosystem beginning to push toward balance. Yet major risks remain. Burmese pythons are still present in vast numbers, possibly tens of thousands, scattered across 1.5 million acres of wetland. Even with better detection, the sheer volume of snakes outpaces removal. Total eradication remains a long shot. The best-case scenario is now suppression and stabilization, not victory. The robot program, though promising, comes at a cost. Each unit averages around $4,000, excluding maintenance and monitoring. While solar-powered, they require consistent data retrieval, software updates, and human response teams. A lack of long-term funding could stall progress just as momentum builds. Conservation programs are notoriously vulnerable to political tides, and ridicule, even after success, lingers in budget hearings. Ecologically, reintroducing apex predators is also delicate. Eastern indigos need large ranges and face threats from roads, development, and habitat fragmentation. Hatchlings are vulnerable. For the restoration to work, Florida must protect habitat corridors and monitor populations for years. Success requires time, often more than politicians or budgets allow. Yet amidst the lingering risks, one transformation was undeniable: public perception. Those who once laughed were now asking how they could help. The shift in tone, from mocking to hopeful, marked a rare cultural victory in the world of conservation science. The speechless politicians and public shift. In early 2023, headlines mocked the idea of robotic rabbits. By mid-2024, the tone had changed. State lawmakers who once rolled their eyes were now requesting briefings, and Florida's House Appropriations Committee approved an expanded pilot in 3 new counties. What had been a media punchline became a symbol of innovation and unexpected success. The public response followed suit. Once skeptical communities near Lake Okeechobee and Big Cypress began reporting increased sightings of small mammals, rabbits, raccoons, even foxes. Anecdotal evidence suggested the marsh was beginning to stir again. Videos from field cameras showing pythons striking decoys went viral, generating millions of views and changing the narrative from "weird idea" to "why not here?" Media outlets shifted as well. Outlets that mocked the project now ran headlines like "The Bunny That Fights Back" and "AI Rabbits Are Saving the Everglades." Documentaries were commissioned. School programs began using the Robot Initiative to teach students about invasive species, ecosystems, and the value of unconventional problem-solving. That shift in tone proved crucial. In ecological restoration, public support is often the difference between sustained funding and forgotten initiatives. In Florida, ridicule had turned to respect. The rabbit wasn't just a tool. It had become a story of resilience, technology, and redemption. It wasn't just the snakes that got caught. It was also, finally, the public's imagination. With public will rising, funding growing, and strategies evolving, Florida was at a crossroads. Could this fragile alliance between nature, tech, and people hold? The answer lay not in headlines, but in the quiet return of balance to a broken landscape. Can Florida win this war? Despite the success of 2024, the Burmese python still roams unchecked through much of the Everglades. They are deeply entrenched, camouflaged, secretive, prolific. The war isn't over, but the tide may finally be turning. If robotic bait systems scale across the 1.5 million acre region, and if detection and response remain rapid, python reproduction may slow. Florida may not eliminate them, but it may learn to live with them. The real wild card lies in the eastern indigo snakes. If these reintroduced predators establish self-sustaining populations by 2026, they could resume their ecological role, checking python numbers naturally. Add in habitat restoration, controlled burns, and continued tech innovation, and Florida might begin restoring the balance that once defined the Everglades. But victory here won't be a sudden headline. It won't look like a snake-free marsh or a single triumphant capture. It will be seen in the quiet return of raccoons, otters, rabbits, and herons, in the rebirth of a soundscape silenced for decades. It will come slowly, subtly, like water filtering back through dried soil. Florida's gamble on robots, rewilding, and ridicule reminds the world that innovation is often uncomfortable, sometimes mocked, and occasionally essential. The lesson: when nature collapses, the right response might not look right at all. But if it works, the laughter stops, and the healing begins. As Florida rebuilds its marshland future, the rest of the world watches. From Australia to the Amazon, the Everglades story whispers a truth we must all learn. When nature fights for its life, the strangest allies may be its best hope. The Everglades battle isn't over, but the tide has shifted. What was once a punchline has become a lifeline. Robotic rabbits, native predators, and bold thinking offering hope in the face of ecological collapse. Florida dared to try what others wouldn't, and it worked. As ecosystems around the world face similar threats, this story stands as a lesson. Sometimes, the strangest ideas save the most. The question now isn't why Florida tried this, but why no one else did.